mission is to build a future where no one needs to come out anymore. Together, we can create a world where everyone has the right to love, to succeed, to have a family, and to live a full, happy life. Welcome back, everyone. Our guest today is Hayley. Welcome, Hayley.
Thank you.
I'm very happy that you accept my invitation. Do you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. So my name is Hayley. I am 37 years old. I am a mother and I'm a wife. I have 2 children, a 6-year-old boy and a 4.5-year-old girl. And I'm also a nurse and a midwife.
Oh, so a mother of 2, a wife, a nurse and midwife, and you found time and energy to become a surrogate. How did you do that?
So after the birth of my daughter, I started thinking more about the women and men out there that couldn't have children for themselves for whatever reason. And in my line of work, I had met a lot of women who had had very sad histories of repeated miscarriages or repeated IVF cycles that didn't work, people who had been able to conceive naturally and then have devastating outcomes where the baby has got abnormalities or has sadly passed. And it just sounded awfully tragic. And these were the women who were able to have children. And it made me think about the women who weren't able to have children. Mm-hmm. So I started researching surrogacy and what that meant in Australia.
I can't even imagine. So you start looking into surrogacy out of altruistic reason of helping others to create a family.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Please tell us, how did your husband react, or your family or your friends? I mean, how did you get everyone on board, or did you?
So my husband was very accepting right from the start. He knows what I'm like. He knows I'm a very strong and passionate and driven woman. And he knows that I'm obviously caring and giving. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't all that surprised. And it's probably something that we had talked about on and off throughout our relationship.
Okay.
So after we had our daughter and we were driving home from the hospital, I said to him, I think I could do this for somebody else. And he said, yeah, okay. And it was just a casual conversation. It was nothing serious. And as my daughter head towards the age of 1, I said to him, well, I'd like to pursue surrogacy now. And he was accepting of that. And he said, let's look into it more and learn as much as we possibly can. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
Wow. So beautiful.
My friends, I didn't really say too much to my friends because I didn't want to be swayed by any negativity. I knew in my mind that I wanted to do it and nobody was going to tell me otherwise. I just needed to be sure that it was a safe thing for me and my family to do, and then everybody else would find out.
I love it. I love how you just conserve your energy and don't waste it off explaining to everyone why and how and all that. Brilliant. What about the rest of the family?
So I was most worried about telling my mum because I knew that she would be worried for my safety. Mm-hmm. So I actually didn't tell her until I had met people who I wanted to help. And by that stage, I felt confident that it was going to go ahead. And I felt confident to be able to answer any of her concerns or make her feel at ease with my decisions. So my mum and dad were supportive. Their primary concern at that time was how I would cope with handing the baby over. But they then realised that probably wasn't going to be an issue. And as it turned out, they were heavily involved in my surrogacy pregnancy. In terms of other family members, it wasn't until sort of really close to when ready for embryo transfer or when I was pregnant that I told them what we were doing. And then when I was pregnant, I created a group on Facebook to keep all of our friends and family updated with what was happening so that we didn't have to do that individually to hundreds of people.
That is such a smart alternative to saying the same thing over and over and over again. So here you are, you found your intended parents, the embryo has been transferred, and you are pregnant.
Yep.
How did you receive the compliments of being pregnant?
Yeah, if it was anybody that I didn't know. A lot of times, because I had a young family, so my daughter was nearly 2 and my son was 3.5. So people would say, oh, you've got your hands full, things like that. And if they weren't known to me, I would just say, yeah, thank you.
Right.
At one point, we were at my daughter's swimming lessons and somebody said to me, oh, you're going to have your hands full there, aren't you? And my son interrupted and he said, it doesn't matter because we're not keeping it.
That my son, that could go so many ways.
He knew exactly that this baby was not coming into our family, and he knew that our intentions were to help our friends have a baby. So for him, it was exactly as it was. But for that stranger, they were quite shocked to hear that. So I had to pick up the pieces and tell them what our plans were. For anybody who knew me, say colleagues who didn't know what my intentions were, and they'd say, oh, wow, you're pregnant, congratulations. I would say, yeah, thank you, but I'm being a surrogate for a friend of mine. So, yeah, it's once this baby's born, he'll be going to his mum and dad.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that your son knew about what is going to happen with the baby. So how did you have that conversation with your children?
Yeah, so we had one embryo transfer, which was successful, but not long after, maybe a couple of weeks after a positive pregnancy result, we discovered that my hormone levels were not rising adequately. And so there were some concerns. We ended up miscarrying at 8 weeks. So at that time, we didn't feel confident to tell our children that we were carrying a baby for our friends because we weren't sure how it was going to unfold. And given that they were so young, we didn't think it was necessary to worry them with that. So then with the second attempt, everything looked really positive. And once we had that dating scan and we had an image of the baby, at dinner one night, we just said, by that time they'd developed quite a friendship. For our children, all they ever knew was that they were our friends and we were helping them. So we said to them, look, unfortunately, she has been sick. Now because she's been so sick, she's not able to carry a child for herself. And for me, I feel really sad for her because she'll never have this opportunity to have children like we have got you and you two here. And just opened up the conversation like that and said, so how would you feel if we offered to help them to have a baby? And they were so young, they were like, yeah. And so as it turns out, we already have their baby in my tummy. And this is a photo of the baby. And they were like, oh my God, and really excited. And so then we reminded them that this baby was very special and we had to protect it. And over the next few months, the baby would grow in my tummy. And once the baby was big enough to be born, we would go to the hospital and the baby would be born. And then we would give it to our friends because the baby belongs to our friends. And then throughout the pregnancy, they realized that our friends were not going anywhere and we would always have an ongoing long-term relationship. So they would get to know the baby. And so it was never a real shock or a surprise to them. And it was simply exactly what it was. I was pregnant with somebody else's baby. And once the baby was old enough to go to his mum and dad, he did go to his mum and dad. And for them, that's their normal. They don't know any different. They don't know that not everybody carries babies for other people.
Right. You guys being open and honest and let them know what's happening. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. And they were so young that they just took it as exactly as it was. There was no confusion for them.
Right.
I was worried that at school, children or teachers might say to them, when your brother or sister arrives. So I gave the teachers a heads up and I said, just so you know, this baby is not a baby of ours and I'm acting as the surrogate, and when the baby's born, it will go to its mum and dad. So there was never any confusion within the school either.
Wonderful. Seems to me
really think of everything. You lined up the friends, the family, make the group on Facebook, make it clear to your own children, talk with the school.
Very well planned. So wasn't there any things that didn't play out as they've been planned? Any challenges?
Yeah, there were lots of things that were challenging. The pregnancy itself was very different to the pregnancies I had with my own children.
Mm-hmm. How different?
First of all, the IVF process. So that was different. And was challenging in that I was being dealt with by a fertility clinic, and I had to follow regimes that other women who were having struggles with conceiving were following. And I wasn't an infertile woman. I never had trouble with conceiving children.
Right. So now you kind of have to follow pretty much the same procedures?
Yeah. So the same lead up in hormones leading up to the embryo transfer, and then hormonal support following the embryo transfer, and really close monitoring of my hormone levels with blood tests. So that in itself was really quite full on and time consuming, but I knew that that was what I needed to do.
Wow, what an experience. And how was your pregnancy?
In the first trimester, it was very different to my own pregnancy in that I suffered headaches, the nausea and the tiredness was a little bit difficult to deal with because I was working and I had a young family. And again, I knew what I had signed up for. So I just had to rise above it and try and get on with it. The second trimester was relatively straightforward physically. Emotionally, it was a little bit challenging in that just trying to address where everybody was sitting emotionally. So making sure that my friends felt involved, that they felt I was keeping them involved and reporting back to them how things were progressing in the pregnancy, and sort of filtering what I thought they wanted to hear or what I thought they didn't want to hear. That in itself is a bit challenging. And then the third trimester was very exciting because you're getting closer and closer to this baby being born. We had a baby shower on a weekend in January, which was lovely, and all of their friends and family came together to wish our friends well for when this baby arrived. And they also all came together to say thank you to me and my family for doing this beautiful thing.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful.
Sounds like a celebration. And this is coming from someone that I am not a fan of baby showers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was a little bit apprehensive because I didn't set out to be a surrogate to get all of this praise and thanks from people. It was something that I wanted to do for somebody who wasn't able to have children. So I didn't want all of this praise, but that's the way that my friends felt, their way of saying thanks to me, and all of their friends in their way of saying thanks to me for what I was doing for my friends. So it was a beautiful day. And then 2 days later, when I was at work, I was feeling really uncomfortable. I was 31 weeks and I went on my tea break and sat down and realised that I was actually contracting every 2 minutes. And so from there, that was the last day that I worked. And I spent about a week in and out of hospital over the course of the next month, trying to stop the labour from coming on. And in the end, it turned out that I just had a very irritable uterus, and any sort of activity really set off my uterus. So from there, I just had to take it really, really easy, which was difficult to manage with little children and in summer as well.
I'm sorry you had to go through that stressful experience.
Yeah. So that was challenging. That was very challenging because obviously the stress that was brought upon my family and the stress that was brought upon for my friends, they felt completely useless. There was nothing really that they could do. They could just offer support to us as we needed it. And everybody was just on standby waiting to see whether or not the baby was going to come early or if he was going to sit in there for a bit longer. And thankfully he stayed in there until 38 weeks.
I'm so glad. Thank you for sharing. So yeah. I know you mentioned that you opened a Facebook group to update everyone, but was there anyone to be like a buffer between you and the rest of the people?
The Facebook group really helped because I could just do updates on there, and then I would receive text messages or phone calls from people who felt like they needed to touch base and just see if there's anything that they could do to help us. So that was actually okay. And then my husband was the buffer a lot of the time.
High five to the husband.
High five to the husband. He's an amazing man.
Obviously. Can I take you back to the big day?
Definitely.
When the baby was born.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
Everything, as much as you're willing to share. So let's start with, how is it to give birth and then give that baby away that was part of you for 9 months?
I mean, he was never mine. So never at any point in the pregnancy did I feel like he was a product of me, because he wasn't. It was plain and simple. His conception was artificial. We knew what we were doing. We knew that we were carrying a baby for our friends. The pregnancy was very different to that of our own because we knew it was different.
Was it that knowledge so powerful that just let your whole physiology and your whole body know that that's not your baby?
Yeah, we weren't preparing for a baby either. We didn't want a baby. One of the prerequisites for being a surrogate is that you have had at least one child, and ideally that you've completed your family, so that you don't run the risk of perhaps wanting to keep that child, or that you don't run into complications that prevent you from having another child if you want to. So we didn't want another baby, and most certainly we didn't want our friend's baby. And coming towards the end of the pregnancy, I was so ready to give birth to him and for him to go to his mum and dad, because it was my time to go on with my life. It was my time to go back to my family and be the mother that I wasn't really able to be in the last couple of months because I was so preoccupied by the complications of the pregnancy. And so I felt like I was ready to give birth. We ended up getting induced. It was fairly well planned. His mum and dad came in at the start of the induction, and we had all agreed together that they would stay until I reached a point where I wanted privacy. And at that point, when I said, okay, now's the time, they knew that they would go off and do something for themselves until we called them back. Me and the intending mother spent a couple of hours walking around trying to establish the labour. Once the labour started getting really intense, I said, I just need to be on my own now, which is what I've done with my own children, just being with my husband. So they went off and they had lunch, and I believe it was quite a nerve-wracking and a difficult time for them to leave me in that moment, but that's what I needed and they respected that.
So you send them for lunch and deliver a baby for dessert?
Yeah, exactly. And as it turned out, they didn't get to finish their lunch because they'd only gone an hour before my husband called and said, you need to come back. And we had agreed that I would like them to be there, and they wanted to be there as well to witness their baby coming into the world. And I was on all fours, and our obstetrician and midwife birthed him and held him up to his mum and dad and said, what is it? And they got to announce that it's a boy. And it was a very, very, very beautiful moment. And there wasn't a dry eye in the room, except me, of course, because I just felt so relieved that he was here and that he was crying, that he was well, and that the birth had gone exactly how I had dreamed that the birth of a surrogate baby would go for me. And everybody was so excited. Oh my God, it's a boy. And he was still behind me and I hadn't even seen him. I was like, pass him through to me so I can see him, please. So then I held him. He immediately weed all over me. But in that moment, I looked at him and he looked nothing like my children. I think instinctively as a mother, for me personally, I can look at my children and go, oh my God, I love you and I will care and nurture you for the rest of your life. You are mine.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
But with my surrogate baby, he looked nothing like my children. And psychologically, I knew he wasn't mine. So those two factors brought together, and the fact that his mum and dad were beside me, handing him over to his mum and dad was not a problem at all. It was the easiest thing of the entire journey, actually.
Wow, what an experience.
And it's the moment that every surrogate dreams of, is that moment that you get to place that baby into its parents' arms. And the job had been done then. I had given a baby to my friends and they were on top of the world. So it was nice to be able to do that for them.
Can you describe the joy that you felt just watching your friends holding their baby, knowing that you are the one that helped them to have a family?
Yeah, and I had got what I wanted as well. I had been able to carry a baby for my friends. I had been able to give birth as I wanted to. There was no complications in the birth. And once I had given birth to the placenta, I got up and I had a shower. And all I wanted was to have a glass of champagne with my husband, because we had been through so much and we had achieved what we set out to do.
Well, a lot to celebrate.
Yeah. It was beautiful. And so the baby, he went to his mum and had skin to skin with his mum for about 3 hours. And it was just beautiful, so beautiful to see her be a mum. And she invited her mum and dad to the room because they were all out together for lunch. And it's a first grandchild for her mum and dad. So it was a very special moment. And my mum and dad were here as well. And on the day of the birth, they were looking after our children. So once he was born, I rang them and said, it's a boy. And they were driving near the hospital, actually. They'd been out for lunch with my brother. And they said, oh, can we pop in? And I said, of course. So within moments of that baby being born, he was greeted by his grandparents. My parents got to meet him. My children got to meet him.
That baby's family just doubled.
The baby's family just doubled, you're right. Yeah. He's loved by so many. He's a very lucky child that he doesn't have the love just from his own biological family, but, you know, his surrogate's family, they're always interested to hear how he is and how he's getting on in life. And I think that that will continue forever.
That's so beautiful. Are you still in contact?
Yeah. So I would describe it as, to me, they feel like family. You know, if I don't hear from them for a little while, I'm interested to hear how they're going. And if they're not well, I want to hear how they're going.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever miss him?
I don't miss him, the baby, as such, but I suppose I've never had to miss him because his mum and dad keep me updated with how he's going, and we try to catch up as much as we can. So sometimes that's every couple of weeks, sometimes it's a couple of months. When I see him, it feels so foreign to me. I don't feel like I carried him. I suppose it's a bit like a niece or a nephew.
So not necessarily miss him, but just have love for him.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful relationship. And I feel so grateful that even when it was challenging, we were able to make our way through that. And what we've got now is just beautiful.
Yes. And I want to thank you for being so courageous to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving this couple the chance to be a family and have their own child.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's not just beautiful for them, but it's beautiful for me as well. There's the joy that it brings to my life is never ending.
I'm pretty sure that only women they went through the same experience like you truly understand what you are talking about. To me, it still sounds like an act of pure courage and altruism and love.
Yeah, that's right. In saying that, though, you know, people say, "Oh, wow, what you did was amazing," and it's a huge thing that you did. And yeah, it is. But for me, it's something that I felt that I was able to do. I felt like I was strong enough to be able to do it. And for some people, they go and climb mountains in other countries, or you know, they do other great things. But for me, this was the great thing that I felt like I could do, and I've done it, and I'm grateful that I did it.
So great. So Hayley, let me ask you, what will be your advice for women out there that might consider to become surrogates?
For a surrogate, I would say learn as much as you possibly can. So whatever state you're in, look at what the legislation is for your state and learn what it is that you can do and what you can't do. There are certain restrictions in terms of age and whether or not you've had your own children. Then after that, I would recommend that you get in contact with people who have been a surrogate so that you can learn more about their experience, because I would say that nearly every surrogate experiences a very different pregnancy when they carry a child for somebody else. We don't know why, but there are so many different factors to a surrogacy pregnancy to one of your own. So we see that morning sickness and hyperemesis is far more common with surrogate pregnancies. And obviously with the different genetic material as well, it puts you at a bit of a heightened risk for certain complications. And I'd never had complications with my children. So when the complications arose with my surrogate pregnancy, it was a little bit of a shock, but we knew that it was possible. So you need to be able to accommodate that, because hospital admissions, my husband had to stop work to be able to look after our children. And once I was at home, I was I had to take it really easy. So his days at work had to be reduced to be able to allow me to just take it easy. So I wasn't out and about in the parks with my children. It was a lot of sitting at home doing not much at all. And if it wasn't for my family, then it would have been a lot harder than it actually was. Make sure that you shouldn't ever be financially out of pocket in going on a surrogacy journey, but there are times where you need to have some money to do certain things. So you may need to pay for medications or parking or an appointment, and you will be reimbursed for that, and you should be reimbursed for that. But there are times where you need to use your own money. And I would say be sure that you know who you're going to be carrying a baby for. It's one of the most stressful things to do, go on a surrogacy journey with another couple. So you need to know that your relationship is strong enough to withstand some of those challenges, spending lots of time with them, knowing what you want for this pregnancy and into the future, aligned with what the intending parents want as well, so that into the future you can feel satisfied that you've done this thing for them, and that you feel you've done something good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Do you have any advice for intended parents?
For the intending parents, I would say, well, for surrogates and intending parents, make sure you've got good supports around, because it's a challenging journey and it can be isolating at times. So you don't want to be doing it all on your own. Make sure you've got good support around. Utilise a counsellor. You should be in the pregnancy anyway, because it's tough. But if you need to use that counsellor a little bit more than recommended, then so be it. It's hard for intending parents, but I think it's probably similar to what I said for surrogates. Just learn as much as you possibly can. Learn from others. Here in Western Australia, we've got a support group for surrogates and intending parents. So talk to other people, learn from other people, share your experience, share the highs and lows, because everybody has their highs and lows, and all we ever hope for is that at the end everybody gets to achieve their dreams.
Yes, so beautifully said.
And I want to thank you for sharing your story and tell us about your experience and your highs and lows. And you talk about this support group for intended parents and for surrogates. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
So when I first started looking into surrogacy, there was no local surrogacy group in place here in Western Australia. So I created one and invited people to come and join the group. And I would organise catch-ups every couple of months so I could get to know people within the community here in Western Australia and provide support to other people. And from that, we now have 260 members, and we have regular catch-ups so that people can learn, people can share their experiences, and it's beautiful to have that support for myself and for other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Great work. So tell us, what is the name of the group and how people could find you if they want to join?
Yeah, if you just search for the Western Australia Surrogacy Group, and then you'll be invited to answer a couple of questions to make sure that you're legitimate in wanting to join the group, because it's such a small group and we share some sensitive and private information. We need to make sure that everybody joining is there for the right reasons.
Amazing work.
Thank you.
And in the end, allow me to thank you again for accepting my invitation and for sharing your story and your experience that I believe will help so many others that consider taking this path.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Redefine Family, a Spark Transformation podcast. Feel free to share your story, knowing that your story could change someone's life. We invite you to spread the love by sharing our message with others. And leave your comments at spark@redefinefamily.com. Until next time, remember that you are the spark in your life. Just shine bright.